Ever wondered what happens when corporate greed meets karmic justice? Because what I discovered after training my replacement will restore your faith completely. It was a Tuesday morning when my manager walked into my office with that fake smile managers use when they're about to ruin your day. "Hey, we need you to train someone on your workflow," she said, like she was asking me to grab coffee. No explanation, no context. Just train this person to do exactly what you do. Makes sense, right? Wrong. I'd been running this department's core process for 3 years. My system wasn't just working, it was crushing performance metrics. We'd gone from struggling to meet deadlines to exceeding them by weeks. Customer complaints dropped by 80%. Revenue from my department jumped 300%. But here they were telling me to teach someone else how to do my job. The new guy showed up the next Monday, fresh out of college, eager and completely clueless about what made our operation tick. While I'm explaining basic procedures, he's nodding along like he gets it. But here's what made my stomach drop. He had zero understanding of the technology that actually powered everything. See, our entire workflow relied on this specialized system I'd developed. Without it, nothing worked. It's like trying to explain how to drive a car to someone who doesn't know cars need engines. The kid was learning the steering wheel and pedals, but he had no clue about the heart of the machine. Management kept pushing. "Show him everything," they said. "He needs to understand your complete process." They wanted detailed documentation, step-by-step guides, the whole 9 yards. Every time I asked why we were doing this transition, I got corporate speak about restructuring and optimizing resources. But here's the kicker, they never actually said I was getting fired. They danced around it with phrases like "your role is evolving" and "we're redistributing responsibilities." Classic corporate doublespeak. Meanwhile, I'm watching this replacement get trained on my job while supposedly keeping my position. The whole situation felt surreal. I'm training someone to replace me, but officially I'm not being replaced. It's like being asked to dig your own grave while everyone insists you're just doing some gardening. Then there's this uncomfortable fact that nobody talks about. Miles around 30% of workers have been in this exact situation. 3 out of 10 people have been asked to train their own replacements at some point. It's become so common there's actually research on it. Yet when it happens to you, it feels like some cruel joke only you're experiencing. What made it worse was watching my replacement struggle with basic concepts that seemed obvious to me. The system I'd built wasn't just about following procedures, it required understanding why each step mattered. This guy was memorizing steps without grasping the underlying logic. I kept thinking about all those late nights I'd spent perfecting this workflow. All the problems I'd solved that nobody else could figure out, all the innovation that went into making this department successful. And now they wanted to hand it over to someone who couldn't even understand what made it special. But what my managers didn't realize was that I held a secret that would completely flip this entire situation on its head. What I hadn't mentioned during that awkward training session was the little secret sitting in my desk drawer, a patent certificate. My name printed right there as the inventor. 3 years earlier, I'd developed something that changed everything for our company. The manufacturing process was falling apart. Quality control was a nightmare. Orders were backing up because nothing worked right. Management was panicking behind closed doors, though they'd never admit it. That's when I created my solution. Took me 6 months of late nights and weekend experiments. The breakthrough came on a random Tuesday when I figured out how to automate the quality checks while speeding up production by 40%. Sounds boring, right? Well, this boring invention became the backbone of everything we produced. Here's where things get interesting. Most people think companies automatically own whatever their employees create. Makes sense, right? You work there, they pay you, so they own your brain output. But patent law doesn't work that way. The default rule is simple: inventors own their inventions. Period. Companies only get ownership when employees sign something called a patent assignment agreement. It's usually buried in your hiring paperwork between the health insurance forms and the employee handbook acknowledgement. Over 62% of U.S. patents are actually held by individuals, not corporations. That number surprised me too. But here's the kicker. I never signed one of those agreements. When I started at the company 5 years ago, HR was a mess. My hiring process was rushed because they needed someone immediately. The usual stack of paperwork got mixed up. Some forms went missing. Others never made it to my desk. I signed what they put in front of me, but apparently the patent assignment wasn't part of that pile. Then there's the fascinating part about how this stuff actually works in the real world. Companies spend millions every year fighting patent battles they could have avoided with a simple piece of paper. Employee inventors have won multi-million-dollar settlements because someone in HR forgot to include the right documents during orientation. The company had been using my invention for 3 years, built their entire production line around it, marketed products that depended on it, generated millions in revenue from it, all while assuming they owned something they'd never actually acquired the rights to. Patent law has this concept called shop rights. When an employee creates something on company time using company resources, the employer gets the right to use that invention without paying royalties. Sounds generous, doesn't it? But here's what shop rights don't include: the power to license the patent to others, make improvements to it, or stop the inventor from licensing it to competitors. The company had shop rights to my patent, nothing more. I still held all the important cards. While my replacement was learning the ropes of a system he'd never truly understand, I was sitting on the legal equivalent of a ticking time bomb, and management had no idea what was about to blow up in their faces. The next morning felt surreal, walking into the office knowing I had to train someone to do my job while keeping the biggest secret of my career. The new guy, Kevin, seemed nice enough, fresh out of college, eager to learn, completely clueless about what he was stepping into. I started with the basics, showed him the computer system, explained the daily workflow, walked him through the standard procedures. Kevin took notes like his life depended on it. Poor kid had no idea he was about to inherit a process that relied entirely on something I owned. Then came the tricky part, the core technology. This is where things get interesting, I told Kevin, pulling up the main interface. You'll be using this system to optimize our manufacturing process. It's pretty sophisticated stuff. Kevin nodded eagerly. How does it work exactly? Well, funny you should ask. It works because of algorithms I developed over 3 years of late nights and weekend experiments. It works because I figured out how to solve a problem that had stumped our entire engineering team. But I didn't say that. The system analyzes production data and makes real-time adjustments. I explained instead. You don't need to understand the underlying mechanics, just follow these steps. I showed him the interface. Click here, enter these parameters, review the output. Simple enough for anyone to follow. But what Kevin couldn't see were the proprietary calculations running behind those clicks. The mathematical formulas that turned raw data into actionable insights. The breakthrough that had boosted our efficiency by 23%. The company had built their entire competitive advantage around my invention. Their marketing team bragged about it to customers. Their sales reps used it to win contracts. Management took credit for the innovation in board meetings. None of them realized I still held the keys. Kevin caught on quickly to the surface-level stuff. Within a week, he could run the daily reports and handle routine maintenance. This is amazing technology, he said one afternoon. Whoever designed this was brilliant. I almost choked on my coffee. Yeah, they were pretty smart, but here's what made the situation even more absurd. Every time Kevin used the system, he was essentially operating my intellectual property. The company was paying him to use my invention to replace me. It's like firing the chef but keeping their secret recipe, except the recipe was still legally mine. US patent law is crystal clear about this. Unless you explicitly sign away your rights, anything you invent belongs to you. Doesn't matter if you developed it at work, on company time, using company resources, the inventor owns the invention until they say otherwise. I never said otherwise. Training week turned into training month. Kevin mastered every visible aspect of the job, while I carefully guarded every invisible detail. He could operate the system perfectly. He just didn't own the system he was operating. Management seemed pleased with the transition. They had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. But soon, their confidence would hit a very expensive wall. 3 months after they kicked me out, something hilarious happened. The company decided they wanted to officially patent their groundbreaking process. You know, the one that was making them millions? They filed the paperwork with all the confidence of someone who thinks they own the world. Then the patent examiner did what patent examiners do best. They searched existing records. Guess whose name popped up as the official inventor and owner? Mine. Not the company's. Not some corporate entity. Just me, sitting at home in my pajamas, legally owning the technology that powered their entire operation. The legal department must have had a field day. Picture this scene. Someone walks into the CEO's office holding a piece of paper that basically says, "We don't own what we thought we owned." That's when they started digging through HR files like archaeologists looking for treasure. They needed to find my invention assignment agreement, that magical document that would transfer my patent rights to them. But here's where it gets really interesting. No assignment agreement existed. Zero. Zilch. Nothing in my employee file, nothing in legal, nothing anywhere. I had never signed away the rights to my creation, which means under US patent law, I remained the rightful owner. Well, the company did have something called shop rights. This legal concept sounds fancier than it actually is. Shop rights basically mean they could continue using my invention for their current operations since I developed it on company time using company resources. Fair enough, right? However, shop rights are like having permission to drive someone else's car. You can use it, but you definitely can't sell it or decide who else gets to drive it. The company could manufacture products using my patent, but they couldn't license it to others. They couldn't prevent competitors from licensing it from me, and they certainly couldn't control what I did with it. And the weird part is, shop rights don't transfer if they sell the company or the product line. They're stuck to the original employer like a sticky note that won't come off. Any new owners would need to negotiate directly with me, the actual patent holder. This discovery created a massive problem for their expansion plans. They wanted to license the technology to international partners, maybe even sell it outright to bigger companies. Suddenly, every potential deal required my signature. Every licensing agreement needed my approval. Every strategic partnership had to go through me first. The replacement they trained so carefully, still completely useless for anything involving patent decisions. You can't train someone to own intellectual property rights. That's not how patents work. Legal ownership isn't a skill you learn in a 2-week training program. Then there is the uncomfortable realization that hit them next. If I owned the patent, what was stopping me from doing something they really wouldn't like? Something that would make their original decision to fire me look even worse than it already did. That's when things got really messy for everyone involved. Now here's where things got really interesting. Management suddenly found themselves in a position they never saw coming. They needed my permission for everything, want to expand production, need my approval. Planning to license the technology to other companies, that requires my signature, looking to develop new products using my patented process. Well, guess who holds the keys to that kingdom? The power dynamic had completely flipped overnight. The same executives who casually told me to train my replacement were now scheduling meetings with me. Funny how quickly attitudes change when you realize someone else controls your most valuable asset. But here's the kicker. I could license my patent to their competitors. Think about that for a second. Their biggest rivals could potentially get access to the same technology that gave my former company its competitive edge. The very invention they took for granted suddenly became their biggest vulnerability. And the weird part is, hiring an army of new engineers wouldn't fix their problem. You can't replace patent ownership with personnel. The replacement they trained, he could operate the system, sure, but he couldn't grant them the legal right to use it. That power belonged exclusively to me. Let's not forget the financial implications here. Some inventors in similar situations have walked away with multi-million-dollar settlements. There's precedent for this. Companies that assumed they owned employee inventions have paid dearly for their oversight. One famous case involved an engineer whose employer tried to patent his invention after he left. The court ruled the company owed him millions in licensing fees. Another inventor successfully sued for a percentage of all revenue generated by his unassigned patent. These aren't small numbers we're talking about. Then there's the licensing potential. My former employer was generating significant revenue from products built around my invention. Now they had to negotiate with me for continued use. The tables had turned completely. Meanwhile, their competitors were probably wondering if they could cut a deal with me directly. Nothing stops a patent holder from licensing to multiple parties. The company that fired me might soon find their rivals using the exact same technology. Management probably realized they'd made a costly mistake, not just in letting me go, but in never securing proper patent assignments from their employees. Their legal team was likely scrambling to figure out damage control. The replacement they trained was still there, still following my workflow. But he was essentially operating borrowed technology without the company having clear ownership rights. Every product they shipped using my process was a reminder of their oversight. This whole situation highlights something crucial about intellectual property. Clear agreements matter for everyone involved. Companies need proper invention assignment contracts. Employees need to understand what rights they're signing away. Nobody benefits when these things are left unclear. The person they thought was easily replaceable had become irreplaceable in the most literal sense possible, because you can train someone to do a job, but you can't train them to own a patent.